Hi everyone, it's Thirsty Water here, and welcome back to our next episode on beef, salt, and thirsty water. Today, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter one. I've got an article here that is actually a conversation thread from Reddit that I've got here that I want to share with you today. Now, if you're familiar with Reddit, it's a sort of discussion board, I guess you could call it. It's a lot of people just post their comments, and people you can post like articles or questions, and just it's basically discussion on anything you could possibly think of. You'll find it on Reddit. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But hey, you take the good with the bad and stick to the good communities, the cleaner communities, and you'll be just fine. Reddit, there's a wealth of knowledge on Reddit. Now, it's not necessarily scientifically backed. It is an opinion forum, basically. But that's okay, because a lot of this is just based on, these people. These are people who, in the case of the carnivore communities, as per the subject of this channel here, they've done their research. They've done what works for them. They've done what doesn't work for them. And so they've figured some things out and learned a fair bit along the way. And so it's a great idea to get some advice, some inspiration, just some things that you may not have thought about. I've learned a lot about carnivore from Reddit, and I'm not going to say that I've necessarily taken everything as gospel. It's not all got references. In fact, most of it doesn't have references. But you know what? Some people do put references, links to studies or other credible sources where they got the information from, and you can check it out. And if it all adds up, then maybe it's something you want to investigate for yourself. Or even if you can't find a reference or a source, if it just makes sense to you, then why not give it a shot? The nice thing about this is, no matter what you try on your carnivore journey, as long as you do it with the mindset of, I'm going to try something for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 60 days, however many, 90 days, whatever you want, try it, knowing that I'm going to do this. It's not going to kill me. Unless if it's, okay, some things may. Obviously use common sense here. But something like a dietary shift like this, if you don't have any other crazy underlying health circumstances, then give it a whirl. And if you do have some serious underlying health concerns, then definitely take a more gradual approach. Consult your doctor. Remember, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. I'm just a guy who's sharing my experience with the carnivore diet, as well as sharing things that I found interesting, useful, and have helped me along the way. And so, with that said, one of the things that you have to do on a carnivore diet is eat fat, because we're not eating carbohydrates. We're not getting our energy from grains and starches and sugars. We're getting our energy from fat. Now, you don't want to get your energy from protein. Obviously, on a carnivore diet, you're going to eat a fair amount of meat. You're going to eat mostly meat. In fact, you might eat all meat. But in that, if it's too lean, you're going to run into problems. You can get something called rabbit starvation. That's when you eat too much protein and not enough fat. Now, I've seen a few articles in the past week that I wanted to share on the subject, but this one that I found that really spoke to me, it kind of answered a question that I had, was about tallow versus butter as a way to add fat, healthy fat, to your diet. Now, most people love butter. Butter is awesome, especially if you get grass-fed butter, then it's super healthy and super awesome. If you can just get regular conventional butter, that's fine. Dr. Ken Berry says, do what you can do. Get what you can afford. Get the best meat, get the best fat that you can afford. If you can afford Spam and bologna, and that's it, then by all means, go ahead and do that. If you can afford cheap, no-name, whatever, bargain butter, as long as it's real butter, not margarine, nothing seed oils, nothing like that. If it's actual cow's milk butter, or goat's milk butter, or whatever, ruminant mammal butter, pure, go for it. It's great. If you can get grass-fed, it's a little bit better, because then you've got more of the nutrients, less of the garbage from the grains that the cow was forced to eat, more the nutrients that they picked up from the grasses. You get better omega-3 to omega-6 ratios. You get more, oh, I'm going to mess this up, CLAs, conjugated linoleic acid, or something like that. Nailed it! Whatever it is. The fats are better. You get, it's a healthier fat. But a conventional, cheapo, pure butter is still way, way, way better than anything you'll get on a standard American, Canadian, Australian, European, whatever diet. The standard Western diet. And so, yeah, you want to get these natural fats in. But anyways, I am very fortunate in that I have a local Manitoba source for grass-fed beef. And I'm very fortunate that I have this source. I'm very fortunate, I fully admit, that my family will have the means to procure this. So I don't take that for granted. It's almost a luxury in the carnivore community. If you can do that, great. And so we have the ability to do that. And I get grass-fed beef fat, and I render the tallow, and I use that for cooking. But, I mean, it's in a bit of an acquired taste. It's not like it has a gross, beefy, stinky taste or anything. It doesn't. It's not bad, but it's different. It takes some getting used to. It's not butter, let's just say. It's definitely not the flavor of butter. But for a variety of reasons, some people can't tolerate butter or any dairy at all. I'm fortunate. I seem to tolerate dairy well. If I drink milk or have too much cheese, I break out in acne. Every now and then you'll see me with some pimples here. It's because I got a little bit heavy on the whole milk, which is delicious, but I got to keep it to a minimum. Hard cheeses, I seem to be okay. Butter, I seem to be fine with. Some people aren't, though. Some people go for ghee or clarified butter because then even more of the milk solids are taken out. And so that is, I've never tasted ghee or clarified butter, so I don't know what the flavor is like, how it would compare to tallow. But I can handle butter, so I enjoy butter. And I enjoy butter more than tallow, as I said. But what about the differences between the two? Is there a better use case for tallow versus butter? Hence, today's article, which I probably should stop calling an article. It's not an article today. It's a discussion on the r/carnivore. Actually, I'm going to stop showing you my phone screen. It's not very clear. Let's pull it up through the magic of video editing right now on screen for you. All right, so now that we're looking at the same screen together, as you can see, it's on the r/carnivore subreddit. And this particular discussion thread is called Tallow versus Butter. Now there's a link here, and boy, I wish I could see what's on the link. But I click on it. I mean, I'll even do it here with you guys. I click on it. It's at skipthepie.org. It just kind of sits there, and nothing happens. So I guess it's a defunct website. So anyways, let's cancel that. So I'm sorry we can't figure out what that said. But anyway, let's see the discussion that goes around it. Now, you see, this was a discussion from 4 years ago. So, that site's long gone. Sites come and go. This happens. But what they say is, what this first person, ATalk48, says is, according to this, the article that we unfortunately can't see, butter is superior due to the omega-3 to 6 ratio and vitamin and mineral content. I've used tallow more in the past, but I'm considering butter for cooking my ground beef. Does butter oxidize and become more detrimental? I ask because that is why I use tallow, it being good with heat and very stable, less oxidation. Thoughts and opinions are welcome. And I've had the same question too, which is how I stumbled upon this. Now let's see what the discussion says. The first comment on this, well, which actually may not be the first, because they're sorted by best, which I guess by user interaction. Anyway, we'll go through them all, so it doesn't really matter. But this guy says, or girl, says, the omega-3 to 6 ratio depends on the animal's diet, which is very true. Like I was saying before, grass-fed ruminant animals have a better 3 to 6 ratio. Grain-fed, it's too much omega-6. But again, better than just getting seed oils, better than margarine or canola oils or vegetable oils or whatever. Look for grass-fed butter and grass-fed tallow, and you won't have omega-3 issues with either. And that's reassuring and good to know. Butter contains water and proteins. When added to a hot pan, the water takes some time to boil off, which is why you see all the bubbles sizzle. It's the water just literally boiling. And the proteins brown and eventually burn. And that's why you get browned or burned butter. It's because it's the protein in there. You're actually cooking protein as though it was a steak. So you're cooking ground beef. It gets brown because it's protein, just like a protein from a steak would. Tallow is pure fat and has neither of those problems. Now, if you have tallow and you heat it in a pan, if you heat it up too much, it'll smoke because then you've reached the smoke point and it's burning in that sense, or it's smoking off. But it's not that there's no protein in it to brown and no water to boil off. So it won't be sizzly and bubbly unless there's something in it, like a little piece of bacon or a little crumb of scrambled egg left over or whatever, something in there that is being cooked. And that's going to do the bubbling. But yeah, otherwise tallow's pretty tame that way when you're heating it up. Being animal products, both contain mostly saturated fats, so oxidation during cooking is a non-issue. I prefer butter for medium temperature frying, like frying an egg, and tallow for high temperature frying, like searing a steak. Now, when I do my eggs, fried or scrambled, I'll use a heaping teaspoon of tallow, because I find the taste is not offensive. Like I said, it's got a bit of a flavor, but it's not too bad. But mixed in with the eggs, either fried or scrambled, I don't notice it. It's fine. So it doesn't bother me at all. So I can see butter being extra creamy and luxurious. But again, cost is also a concern. Where I live, grass-fed butter is pricey. And the grass-fed tallow that I get from my farmer is still more expensive than cheapy no-name conventional butter. Sorry, I'm not sure. What did I say there? The tallow is cheaper. No, the tallow is more expensive than conventional cheap butter, but the tallow is cheaper than the grass-fed butter. So I would save the butter for something that I would need it on. Eggs, I don't need it. So eggs, I personally use tallow. But it's good to know that the higher temperature frying, because you're not burning the proteins in there, it's good for a high temperature thing, like searing a steak. So the original poster replies and says, "Thanks, this is good info and what I was looking for. I've been using tallow for all beef things and butter with eggs and seafood like shrimp. I'm going to switch to butter for medium temperature stuff, like heating up ground beef, and keep the tallow for the hot stuff." Next person says, "You can leave butter out in a dish for a few days and it'll be fine. Just cover it." And yeah, that's true. I remember a long time ago when I used to have butter, long before I even heard of carnivore. But I would use butter for a while because it seemed natural. I mean, of course it was, and I don't know. One of the many tangents or flip-flops that I've had in my dietary things over the years, and I would use butter. And yeah, I'd absolutely leave it out on the counter. And I found salted butter worked best. Unsalted butter got a bit of a taste, I guess, maybe, as it started to go rancid. I don't know. Salted butter either protected it from going rancid, or the salt just covered up the taste, or maybe a little bit of both. Anyway, that's my experience with butter on a dish. Moving along, Tripoteur says, "Butter definitely becomes rancid when left in contact with air. Can't imagine it does any good to its nutritional properties." That's a good point. "I simply keep it in its store packaging, that waxed and metallic paper thing, and have not suffered any oxidation issues. And if you're going to do that, that's actually a really good idea. What I used to do way back in the day was I would just leave it out on a saucer, and or cut a small hunk off and put it in a little tiny square spice bowl or dipping sauce bowl that I had, like an 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter, just tiny little thing, maybe 1.5 centimeters high. I just put a little bit in there, and this way it wouldn't go too bad. I would use it up before it would start to go rancid. But yeah, keeping it in that paper, that's not a bad idea. Or the waxed tin foil, that's a good idea. I might try that. Next comment: "If you cook your ground beef at low temperature, butter is fine, but it can burn or oxidize at higher temperatures. If your ground beef is fatty enough, you shouldn't even need to add tallow or butter, except as extra fat at the end. And I do want to talk someday soon about how much fat you actually need. And spoiler alert, it's more than you'd think." So my grass-fed farmer had, definitely not holidays, but it was calving season. And so there were a couple months where he was not available, almost 3 months. And so I was out of beef. I was new into this carnivore way of eating, and man, I'm out of grass-fed beef. What am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to go to a superstore and get some regular stuff, right? And boy, the regular store brand beef was so cheap. And I thought, I'll get regular. It's 70-30, which is 70% meat and 30% fat by volume or by weight. I'm not actually sure, but if you look it up, they just call it 70-30, 70%, 30% meat and fat. And so that, I mean, as far as carnivore fat ratios, was amazing. But the cheap beef, it just didn't taste as good. Maybe I've been spoiled by the delicious flavors of a grass-fed beef and the grass-fed fat. And this conventional stuff, it was, I bought so much because it was on sale, and I struggled to get done with it. In fact, today I bought a dozen pounds, about 12 pounds of it. It was like 4 kilos or whatever the math works out to. I finally finished it today, and it was tough. I was doing different things to try and figure it out. But because I'd read about this, about using butter for extra fat, I thought, so I'm going to fry it up, cook it, and leave it in bigger chunks. This was a little more palatable. And then I'm going to drain off all the fat, all the cheapy conventional fat. And then I put it into a bowl. And then I took about, what would that be? 250, 125, about 62 grams, basically a quarter of a 250 gram block of butter. So 62 grams of butter, grass-fed butter. I put it in there, sprinkled some salt on it because it was an unsalted butter, and mixed it in there. And oh, that was creamy and delicious. So I would still, like I said, I'm done with that. Now I'm just going to stick with the good ground beef. I would, if I needed to add fat at cooking time, I would still use the tallow. But boy, a little bit of butter in the bowl after, and as it mixes and with just the residual heat, oh, that is luxurious. That was good. That was today's supper. That and some eggs. And in fact, because I added more fat, it actually filled me up. So technically, I'm not done yet because I was only able to eat half of it. And I was just full. I was satiated. I was done. In a good way, done. Not because it tasted off, just because I was happy. So I'll have the rest tomorrow. Okay, sorry for these rambles. Not really sorry. Like I said before, that's my thing. That's my angle on this channel. I read some things to you. I ramble. I talk about it. That's what this channel's about. And if you're still here, it means you must enjoy it. Thank you for your support. I appreciate that. Now, the final comment on this thread by Pepper Conchobhar. I don't know what that means. But it says, I prefer tallow and lard for high temperature cooking, for the higher smoke point, if nothing else. They really do crisp up food in a wonderful way that butter can't match up. And I'd agree with that. When I cook a steak, I'll pull it out of the pan and cut the heat. Then add a couple of tablespoons of butter to the hot pan to melt while I slice up my meat. Then pour that over the meat with the drippings to bring back some flavor and increase the fat. That way, the butter doesn't burn. Now, like I said, I read this week. And a couple of days ago, I had a round steak for supper. A round steak has almost no fat. If I was smart, I'd have pulled up the nutrient contents on the phone here. You know what? Maybe I can find that. Yeah, let's do that because it's worth taking a look at. So let's go to the Canadian Nutrient Database. And let's see, food name, round steak. Go. And we want this one here, beef hip eye of round steak, boneless, lean, and fat. 0 millimeters, 0 inches of trim. Yeah, like it was lean. There was no fat on it. And so if we go to the nutrients here, per 100 grams, why not? Generate the nutrient profile. Now this here shows, we've got some columns off the screen, but we're not going to worry about those. It's number of observations, standard error, and the data source. Not going to worry about that. We're just worried about these first ones. The nutrient name, the unit of measurement, and the value per 100 grams. And this is about, my steak was about 350 grams, so multiplied by 3.5, but you just see the ratios anyway. So in 100 grams of this steak, 73 grams of that is moisture. It's just water. So there are only actually 23 grams of protein and 3.5 grams of fat. Now for fat ratios, fat to protein, you want at least 1-to-1 by grams. And so this doesn't come anywhere close. But, and of course 0 grams of carbohydrates. Now let's go back to where we were here. And, it did that thing where the screen went off. Sorry guys. I noticed last time the video got a little choppy when that happened. But we're back. So after reading this article, I did that. I did exactly that, especially since it was such a lean steak. I seared it in tallow, probably about a tablespoon. Seared it for 3 minutes on either side. Actually, I'll go into recipes. I'm going to do some recipes. I'll tell you how I cooked it later. But anyways, I seared it in the tallow and then finished it in the oven. And then when it was done, I took it out, put it on my plate. Now, I didn't pre-slice it. I just dropped it on the plate. But still, with the cast iron out of the oven, not on a hot element, I stuck probably a tablespoon and a half of butter into the pan. Let it melt, swirled it around a bit while the steak rested on my plate. And then I just poured it all on top of the steak. And then as I would slice my steak, I would dip it in this luxurious mix of juices and rendered fat. Well, not much fat rendered, but the tallow that I'd seared it in, the butter that I added. It was good. And then I was able to get a decent fat amount to go with it. So, yeah, that was a good steak. Well, folks, I think I've rambled enough for this small video. I thought it was going to be 5 or 6 minutes, and I can see we're past the 20-minute mark already. So, there's definitely got some original content to go with the articles, which is good. Because I don't just want to be a parrot here. I want to add some value for you guys, too. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please share this with your friends. If you gained anything useful out of it, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, like the video, and thanks for watching. I'm Thirsty Water, and you have been watching Beef, Salt, and Thirsty Water. See you again next week. Bye for now.